Hey, Julian.
Hey Jana, how are you?
Good, good. Are you in a different room this time?
No, same room.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I may have moved my laptop around slightly. Who knows? Sometimes sometimes it's more that way, sometimes it's more that way. That's about it.
So is it night here?
It's 3 in the morning.
Oh my God. I don't know how you do that. Nobody really appreciates what that's like. I don't think. That's just amazing.
You
Wow.
just get used to it.
Yeah, well, you're good like that though. Committed. There's Justin.
Hey Justin.
Hello, hello,
Hi.
hello.
Hey, Wendy. There she is. Where's your kitties? Wendy, where's your
They are in the other room, but I'm on the iPad, so I'm mobile.
Bring in Calypso. I want to see how it doubled in size nearly.
Okay, let me, I'll go to her instead of taking her here. She doesn't have office privileges yet.
How's your life, Justin?
Say what?
How's your life?
All's well.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what is it today?
How am I doing? Is that
Your
what
life.
the question?
Your life, yes. How is your life?
My
On a
life.
scale
We'll go with the
Great
5.
question.
So you were just pretending. Everything was fine.
Yeah. Oh, things are all right. I mean,
I know. That's life. Yeah, I get it. Yes.
it is.
I have to give some love to my senior really quick. Can you see him?
Oh, lovely.
And he's like, "What are you doing? I'm over this." There's my senior. Yeah.
Oh, she looks so much better.
So cute.
Yeah, she's doing loads better. She's up almost to 13 ounces now.
She was 7 ounces last week.
Yep.
Wow.
So
It looks like one of those stuffed animals with the big eyes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know, seriously.
What's the name?
Calypso.
Calypso. Oh, that's so cute.
And she is not staying still for anything right now, which is good. That is what kittens should be doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you know, it's a big relief because I can go out and stay out an hour or two longer than, you know, it's not the end of the world. She's not starving anymore. So
Are you still having to feed her, or is she eating on her own pretty well?
she's eating mostly on her own.
Good.
So yeah, that's a big relief and much better and is much more appropriately sized for her age now. So
Yeah. Good.
so yeah, so all is well.
Thanks to you.
Yep.
True.
Lovely.
Well, ladies that are here, we might as well. Ah, there's Shannon too. And very good.
Ladies and Marty.
Hey there.
Hey,
Hello.
Shannon.
How's everybody?
Good.
Good.
We're looking at Wendy's baby kitten.
Oh, wait a minute. I want to see it.
Hang on.
We're on kitten cam.
Oh, so cute.
It's doubled in size since last week.
Oh,
From 7 ounces to almost 13.
oh man. I miss my cat. Dang it.
Aw.
So cute.
So let's dive in. Do any one of you need to or want to go first, since we don't have any sporting events competing this week?
I'm good whenever.
Yeah, I am too. I can't go last, but I can do any of the others.
Doesn't matter to me. I went first last week. Should be somebody else's turn, maybe? I don't know.
Well, since Julianne didn't say anything, maybe we'll have her go first.
Okay.
Cool. Let me turn this up.
Good morning for Julianne, Justin. It's 3 in the morning.
What's
It's
that?
3 in the morning for Julianne.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully she's all raring to go, right?
Well, stop yawning then.
Very good. Cool. So thank you for this. Thank you for the hard work on it and the edits that you made. I would say all of the changes that you made to this are great. There's a couple little minor ones maybe for expansion that we can go through, but overall, I think it's really, really shaping up. I hope you're feeling that way too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Good. So I reread it completely from the beginning. I looked at the changes and the things that you had moved, but I did reread it, so I took everything in as though I hadn't taken in the story before, which I think is good. Since you're on week 3, of it. It's a thought, and it's just something for you to look back on. But the voiceovers that you have for Dolly, pages basically 1 to 17, I don't know that you actually need those.
Sorry, pages 1 to 17.
Yeah, so basically like the first act almost, and when we're looking back on her life. I'm not saying that you should take them out necessarily, but I actually found that if I kind of took them out in my head, that it flowed really well, and we get the story. So, like I said, I'm not opposed to them, but just something interesting. I think I tried to go through and see if you needed them at all, and I think that you probably do, because there's just information that would be very hard to explain otherwise later. So just something to play with. Maybe you want to reduce them or something. I don't know. There's something to think about.
Yeah, that was what I asked you originally, was did they, or did, because there's so many people that hate voiceovers.
Yeah.
To me, it's sometimes, I don't mind a voiceover it done well, but I do know it can sometimes be like a red flag to people for no good reason.
Nice.
Hi, Marty. He's at the beach again, I can tell.
Apologies for the unprofessional location.
So that would be my my sort of tossing up. The other side is to get rid of them and then suddenly introduce them, I think would be less than organic.
It would be. That's why, again, I'm just throwing it out there that there's so many pages of them where you might not need them, that I wonder then going forward on the ones that you have in the middle there, like basically from page 17 till roughly the midpoint, because then we don't really have them up till the end. We have a couple only. If that information that is pretty key there in the middle, if there is in fact a way, maybe even with the therapist, that she can exposit those key points about what she was feeling and looking back.
Okay. What I might do is get rid of them totally. Do a pass. Yeah. Let's try it out, and just leave the one at the end.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with having the one at the end. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll try that. I kind of got to the point, where I was wondering that myself. So let's see if it's needed.
Yeah, and I think it's to your strength now that you've written the whole thing, because I remember we did talk about that, of course, up front. And I'm not a person, same as yourself, who's like, oh no, voiceover, run, but, there are times when it becomes like, not necessarily a crutch, but it becomes an easy way of exposition versus do we need it, which is, again, the question here. So as you've unfolded the story, I'm not sure you do. So it'd be fun to see if you can take them out, yeah.
I did it that way because what gave me the entry point into the story, which is always good, as long as you got an entry point, you don't have to stick with it, was having watched Lady Bird. I thought it worked very successfully in Lady Bird, but that doesn't mean I've got to stick with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Another thing too, again, now that it's really tight and getting even tighter, is you have 3 montages of passing of time, like right in the first 20 pages. And I just wonder, again, I'm not anti-montage or passage of time at all either, but I wonder if we need those, and I wonder if we could just kind of transition. And maybe you could even hint in the script at a, kind of, shall we say, more creative or editorial way to do it without telling the director or editor, do it this way, kind of thing. So again, something to kind of play with now that you have it really formed.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I think there's one that we needed, but oh gosh, is anything essential? The first montage was just a very easy way of getting from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at it. My notion of Dolly playing naked in front of Tommy's school friends, I never paid off because there was so much other material I could pay off on. Dolly starting school, we don't really need that. Tommy towel drying her, we've already addressed that later. What we could do is just, I could probably do all of that in a scene with her being 12.
Mm-hmm.
I could almost get that whole one into a scene of her being 12 and skip the rest sort of thing. Yeah, because so long as she looks out the window and sees Alice making out, and Alice says, "Don't tell Mum and Dad, I'll take you shopping tomorrow." And, that would be bang, bang. She's getting ready to go out. Charlotte takes the photo. So that's 2 scenes. It'd probably take up maybe an extra half a page.
Right.
And it'd be, so that one's definitely, let me look at the next one. I kind of liked the idea of getting through high school with that one because it's kind of hard work to do that otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one I could definitely get rid of because it's just that one could go in a heartbeat without worrying. So yeah, I guess if I just kept one, that might be, get there.
Yeah. Yep. I think so. Because I think you do need some sort of transition, and it makes the most sense to do it visually that way, and which is what you have. So yeah, cool. So another thought I had going back through again, it's something that's there if you want to use it or not. On page 22, you have Alice's twins, and she alludes to it's their bath time. If you wanted, that's a trigger point as a memory for Dolly, because they're having that conversation. I'm just saying, because bath time is obviously a key issue later. So if you wanted to do some sort of flash where she's kind of like, whoa, what just happened? And we don't get the full image of that memory, that is a place you could do that.
Yeah. That 4 thoughts just rushed through my brain all at once.
Mm-hmm.
If she has a flash and then she could say, because the girls have got older brothers, she could say, "Oh, do the girls still bathe with their brothers?" And Alice could go, "No, they're way too old." Yeah. It could be a different way of doing it, sort of thing.
Yep.
That avoids the flashback, but sort of, so we don't see what Dolly's flashing back to, but she that's probably not the right words, but something, that essence where she makes a comment and Alice is baffled why Dolly would even ask that, because the boys are, sort of, I have to go and check the ages. I think they're 4 or 5 years older than the girls.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too, because it just sets things up, But I agree, it doesn't need to be like a literal flashback necessarily. That might be better if it isn't at that point. So in rereading it too, on page 35, this is where she has the acupuncture that triggers, really the bulk of the rest of the script, which is a great scene. I wonder, though, if either here or throughout, we need a little bit more on the science behind it, because this is such a powerful moment. And because the argument from her family is, oh, this person implanted this inside you, this never happened. At least for me, I wondered that when I read back through it. I've heard of this kind of thing happening before, so I know that it's valid. I've heard, I have people that I know that do like energy or massage work, and the same thing. It can become a trigger point. But just for the audience sake, without it feeling like exposition, like for Dolly, she would wonder what the hell just happened, which she does, but maybe you could have the therapist just elaborate a bit.
Or she can always go to Dr. Google if she, I guess, if the therapist, instead of saying, being so blunt, talks around it and just, if it was just one more paragraph of, instead of just saying, I found this is normally blah, blah, she says, in doing this sort of work, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know the science behind it, so I'll have to.
Well, I know a little bit about it, and I think the bad version would be something like this, because this is the truth of it. Our body traps things inside of us. Emotional experiences are trapped literally in energy, right? That's why you can have really tight muscles even though you weren't working out or you weren't necessarily doing anything, because it's an emotional thing.
Oh, yeah. But I think it's specifically you're looking where that she needled in the
abdomen, yeah.
And that's obviously related to procreation, etc., etc. But I'll try and do it in a way that isn't so dreadfully expositional. So I'll try. I'll have a look at, in fact, I have a chat with my friend because she's heavily into that these days. So, she might be able to give me a nice sentence that would sum it up.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to have a brief bit of what we'll just call exposition there, because we're seeing it through Dolly's eyes. She's never had an experience like that before, so there is a natural need to explain, however briefly, right? We know.
Maybe the doctor will have an anatomical chart, not a gross anatomical chart, but something that shows the energy things, and so just as a nice visual, so the audience.
Well, the doctor chart is definitely something that would be in an office like that.
That's what I'm thinking, and so she can then go and point it out, and just it'd be something that brings, because it seems very blunt at the moment. It's like, hang on, where did that come from?
Yeah, and just for Dolly's sake, if she trusts the therapist, at least in the moment, and trusts the experience, right? It'll be harder. It'd be easier for her to kind of defend it later, so to speak. So.
Yeah, and if she's going, yes, I've had blah, blah, and that there might be a little bit of an exchange, that gives a little bit more substantiation to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll look it up and see what's believable, because and because apparently with my friend it was really quick. I've asked her to tell me the story, and it was about as blunt as what was on the page, and I'm going, wow. But again, sometimes people only tell you that, and then when they think about it, they go, oh yeah, that happened too, when you prompt them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll see if I can get something that's got some authenticity. And it wasn't exactly that, but that was close to the bluntness. But so I'll see if I can get a little bit more authenticity to it. And for her, it happened before the kid was born. And I thought, I've got to have postnatal depression in there. Nothing else makes sense to a normal audience,
Right.
But and to then have the birth happen afterwards and so on burdens the script way too much.
Yeah. No, I think your instincts on that are totally
right. Okay, I'll try. I'll find out, because I tend to agree with you. I always felt that I jerked on it.
Yeah, we just don't want it to feel rushed for the sake of Dolly and the point that we're making, that this is a very real thing, and because we know, you and I obviously, and that it's not about the acupuncture per se. It's about her being in that space to then open up and have someone someone prompted that in that way is really what it was. It could have happened where she had a flash of something on a bus. It didn't necessarily need to involve another person, but her experience did. So.
And I think it'd be kind of cool if she's had it explained to her, but with everybody else, she just describes it in the short form, so that's why they don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. Or, it's also a very easy thing to dismiss for people that just lump everything like that together into one box that they don't want to look at. Okay, so as we're going through, so on page 53, Dolly doesn't even have to say harmless. She can just toss her phone. I think you just had her vocalize. I think it might even be more powerful if she just throws the phone. And it's in response to Tommy's email, yeah, or phone call, rather.
I know the one you mean.
Yeah. On page 58, I like this. It's between, this is where Eric is talking, and you could expand on him answering the how, like explaining to Tommy like how it's different. Because one way that it's different is the way that you and I have talked about, and we all know that getting pleasure from an exchange like that, or a look or that moment, and at his age, like that's the real problem with it. You know what I mean? In other words, if brothers, sisters, friends, whatever, when they're very young, if there's some exploration, but it isn't linked to something that's, sexually pleasurable, like, you know what I mean? Like, to be delicate about it, as delicate as we can. But I think we need a moment where Eric explains very bluntly, like what we all know, but Tommy clearly doesn't.
Yeah, so, and almost, I'm looking at it, so there's got to be, instead of him just going to...
It can be really simple. It's like, Tommy, you were fucking 15, and that enough. It might be enough, but you'll do something there. And then on page 59, when Tommy's...
Just question there. If he did something like, Tommy, you're fucking 15, not 5, and Tommy turns around and says, I kind of felt like I was 5, because I was such a young kid. So he tries to justify his lack of maturity.
Sure. I mean, because that's very real. And that's what he's been told and had reinforced and believes. So, yeah. It's almost not even like a defense mechanism. It's just what he thinks.
It's his truth.
Yeah, his truth. That's a good way to put it. That line that closes out that conversation where he says, give her a hug for me. I wish I could give her a hug in person. That was awful, but great. So, well done.
I had to put that on there.
Let's see. So on page 69, instead of her saying not really, that she doesn't remember, I think she's just blank. Have Liz just continue. Because that's when she's saying, remember when, you told me this when we were in college. I think it'd be better if we just see on her face that maybe she's even going back over it in her own head. But
Yep, sorry, I was looking, don't you remember? And Dolly looks blankly. Yeah, so and obviously Liz doesn't see the blank look because they're not on video phone, but that doesn't matter because Liz is just going blah, 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 blah.
Exactly right. I just don't think we need the not really.
Yeah, I was just breaking up the conversation. It's meaningless dialogue.
No, not at all. It's natural, but it might be better to have Liz, like you said, continue because she's on a roll. So this is something that I like how you've left it, but it is something just to mention. So on page 74, you could add a touch of shame in Dolly talking about enjoying her Sundays with Tommy as she reflects back. But I like that you didn't too, because it kind of leaves room for the actress to bring that out. But just saying, if you want to add that layer of that into the dialogue there, you could.
I think I've got it. She said, I think I did it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've got it on page 75 where she says, why did I keep going in there asking for more like I loved it every fucking week?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, and that's good. So then what it is like as she's even thinking about it, as she's talking about it, she's asking herself that, which is great.
what about instead of doing it as, so where she's going, I thought he loved it. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought he loved me. I'm just looking, what did I do to make him do this to me with I guess I was playing at shame there. So I'm just looking.
I like that she asked the question, but I'll give you my next note because it's in that same scene and maybe that will help. I think Beth should emphasize that she didn't do anything. I think she should ask Dolly and put Dolly on the spot by saying, what would a 4-year-old possibly have done? You know, and she could even, if you want to use this, frame it as Oscar. You know, could Oscar have done anything to deserve that? You know, it's like that really would hit home. It's also a little manipulative, but something to think about.
Yeah, I'm just looking. So instead of her saying you probably didn't do anything, Beth being more, you didn't do anything.
Yes, make it very definitive, absolutely.
So make it emphatic.
Yes. Because for Dolly, she's still trying to wrap her head around it and doing that thing that I know a lot of, for lack of a better word, victims would naturally do, and that's that they look at themselves and I must have done something, I must have said something, I must have gone along with it, whatever the it is.
Yep.
So to continue on too, so on page 75, she says, who do I blame? I think that you might, as a writer, you can address that even more if you want, not necessarily in that scene, because it is a very valid question. There isn't necessarily, I mean, I don't even know the answer from reading the script and knowing the story. Like the parents are certainly to blame to some degree if their ignorance, which you address. Tommy certainly is, because he was old enough to understand what he was doing wasn't what he should be doing, is the good way to say it. But and maybe it's better to leave the question hanging. But I just wanted to point it out to you as you're kind of gearing up toward the finale, if you will, at this point in the script.
Yeah, I like it hanging at the moment, but I'll think about it. Yeah, I'd need to, because if I don't want to overwork the scene with, well, if not them, then who? If not them, then who? That to me burdens it. And I don't think there is an answer. That's the sad part, as you said. You know, it's there's a lot of contributory blame, but there's not one single point. You know, was it the guys at Tommy's school who did this? You know, you can cascade backwards into infinity.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so maybe that alone is good that question came as I was reading it, because it will come to the audience too, which is good. You know, if we could say that word in conjunction with this.
Would it be to do that sentence on its own? Have her respond. So she goes, "Who do I blame?" And Beth says, "Sometimes." So Beth gives an answer like, "Sometimes it's a lot, blah blah," and then she goes, "What about my parents?" And then it can cascade in that way.
Yeah, I mean, play with that. That would make sense. So on pages 76 and 77, you might want to think about playing this a little bit more, that she goes from a victim, right, and being aware of her victimization, right, which she has been up to this point, to wanting to be like a champion in her own family. Like she's going to be the truth teller. She's the one that's going to bring, the truth to them in the hopes that they'll be set free too. And of course, maybe her dad achieves that, but not really the others, which is really powerful. So it's more just a way of framing it, because it would make sense if there's a moment where she thinks she's doing something really that will help them too, not just as a catharsis and a healing for herself. Just something to keep in mind from that point forward. And Alice's reaction to all of this is so real and so complex. Oh, we're not like this. We're not that type of family. I really love that. You can almost do a whole dissertation on that reaction, if we were writing a paper.
Not me, not us. We're not like that.
So the other three notes are things to think about that would require probably adding something in, but I don't think it's a lot.
Yep.
So there's three major points. The first one is, I think that you need another scene, probably before the invitation to her parents' anniversary, about how she and Eric aren't making it anymore, that they're drifting apart. Because otherwise the ending is a little too tied up, like quickly. And since that's one of the framing devices, I think it's important just to see another beat of that. Like, for example, the thing that would make a lot of sense, and I know people who have been in this situation, to have Dolly reject Eric sexually.
Yeah, I did that in just a line in a montage, and that was it. So, yeah.
I think you could expand on that, and either Eric turns to someone else and we only see a glimpse of that because we don't need to follow him, or he's tempted, or it's just like he can't do it anymore. He's tried, and what's the solution,
Is it worth putting them in a scene with Beth, where they go along for counselling?
Maybe.
It could be cliche, but it could be good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great and natural device that you've already introduced, and that would be a step. If Eric is going to do any and everything that he thinks he can up to his own capability to save the marriage and to help heal his wife, that would be something logical to do.
In fact, it could be kind of cool to go from them rejecting each other, him saying, her saying it's not real great, why don't you come along, and he says, I'm trying to help you, whatever. I've booked us an appointment. He goes along and she says to him, I think you need, to see her on your own, so they see her together, see her on her, and he then admits that he doesn't really understand it either, that, he's heard all the words, he's read everything, but why isn't she over it, sort of thing, And so he admits that he understands it, he agrees, he believes, or he doesn't, or whatever, but somehow, the impact on him is this, and it finishes with, is this the rest of my life then? Yeah. And that's what he's looking at.
Yep, I think that's so right, because, love is love, but at the same time, it's like he's a fairly young man, and, is he looking at it coming home to a depressed wife that may or may not harm their child every day? I mean, those are real things. Am I going to have Dolly back that I married, and the fun, fun, free-spirited girl? So yeah, I think that there's room to explore that. I think that will actually be really a really great couple scenes or what have you toward the end. The other thing too that you might want to think about, although you could leave it as it is how otherwise it affected Tommy. Like, it's an interesting thing to explore, and it might not be in the movie, but you could layer it in. And that would be, did this happen where he victimized and assaulted his sister at 15, and then he was fine, quote unquote, from then on until she pulled this out of the history, and put it into his face again. It's an interesting thing.
I wouldn't mind a scene with his wife where, because I would love to have been a fly on the wall when he, having to talk to his wife about it. And she was always terribly, terribly defensive of him, I gather, the real guy. So it would be interesting. And for her, she has to believe him because the truth of I married a child molester is way too big for her to deal with.
But that's a brilliant thing to explore too, that like there isn't just one victim. There isn't just Dolly, Not only now does it affect the whole family, now that the truth has been revealed, it affects Tommy's extension of his relationships, especially the one with his wife. Probably in some degree to how he looks at his own kids too. But I really like that. I think that would be a great scene. And even if it's the wife just saying like, I believe you, and like moving forward, like, that's really powerful.
I was thinking that he says, she's accused me of this. I've tried to help her. And we know, and she already knows. So you presume that she already knew a little bit, but when he shows her the whole email and she goes, oh my God, how could she, blah, blah, blah. And then she gets defensive of our sons are never to know a thing about this. It's appalling. Because she'd go into mama bear mode, and he says, don't worry, I'm already on it. I've talked to, blah, blah, our lawyers sort of thing. So, and that closes out the scene.
Yep, I think so. And I think the wife might be secretly really glad that Dolly's not going to be as close to Tommy anymore too. Because even though that's a brother-sister, he obviously favors her a lot, and it's just another woman that's out of the way kind of thing. That's an interesting other layer to it. That not that you need to bring that out, but I could see that kind of.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Cool.
No, really, yeah, that would be, it's deciding how much to play into it. And he can even say, look, he can even refer to the guys at school, blah, blah, without ever saying anything ever happened, but he's justifying what he did by normalizing it from his friends' experiences.
Yeah.
In some way. I haven't got any idea what I'll say there, but I think that would be kind of cool built into it.
No, I would agree. Especially because he was sent away to an all-boys school, and it's like, he's equating like snapping towels in the locker room when everyone's changing to what he did to Dolly. And it's like, no, those are completely different things. Yeah.
Well, I was talking to my friend the other day, and I mean, again, the story happened slightly differently in that the kid was sent away and the parents hadn't moved back home yet. So he was moved from Indonesia back to New Zealand. And it was like, and she's saying, this poor little boy, how would he understand at 9 years old why he's being sent to a different country and this and that? And she said, he must hate me. That was, and it's really, and it's, what sort of parent does that? But they think they're doing it for a good reason.
Right.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. I can add that in, and I know exactly where, to put that. So that's great.
Perfect. Yeah. Good stuff as always.
Cool. And you said you had 3 points. I only wrote down 2, or did I miss one?
Oh, I think I consolidated them into one.
Okay.
It was about she and Eric.
So I've got the Eric and Dolly scene with throwing in the shrink, and then the Tommy and his wife scene to show that.
Yeah.
Cool. I can do that. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, folks, who would like to go next? Somebody pop on. Yeah.
I will.
All right. Very good. So I told you that I had a little bit of a fun surprise for you in terms of research. I'll give you that first. Are you ready?
Yes. Yes.
So guess what was on the front page of the LA Times when the two women were tossing the papers into people's yards?
What?
Manhunt expanded. How great is that?
It doesn't say Dorner Manhunt, just Manhunt expanded?
That whole title might include his name, but I was doing some research. I couldn't see the actual paper, but in the LA Times archives, that was one of the main stories. Manhunt Manifesto, that was on there too, and then the main headline was Manhunt Expanded.
I love it. I'm going to use
I
that.
died laughing too. I'm like, this is so perfect. Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. And apparently they had like 5 different papers that they were like putting together for people and tossing. So you could almost make up a headline that deals with that
Right.
and have it be. Yeah.
So I read something the other day on that very issue. They said, and I don't know if this is true, but I think I might use it. It was reported that the lights of their cab was on because it was before dawn. So it was
Early morning.
well lit, and so they had the lights of the cab on. So you could have very easily seen who was in there.
Yes. Yep. No, I read the same thing, and it goes into something that I know that you've been playing around, or I should say, you know all these ideas. You've probably been playing around with what to include and what not.
Right.
In a limited series, I would encourage you to play in more of what we will call the conspiracy ideas, right?
Yeah.
That we were talking about briefly over email. Not to the degree that person, tied everything together. But like one point, for example, that makes no sense to me, no matter what article I read or just the facts of it is, the examiner said it's going to take us a long time to figure out if that was Chris's body in the cabin. And all of a sudden you have the report 2 days later that it was him. Like that doesn't make any sense.
And you mentioned the wallet, which I love this wallet thing. Okay, so not only did they find the wallet and the ID unburned in the burned out, completely demolished house, but 2 times before, right? They found his wallet at the border of, or IDs and whatever, at the border of Mexico and then at the airport, both which are kind of similar locations, but.
Yes. Yeah. How did it get from San Diego up to Big Bear? That doesn't make any sense.
He had a lot of IDs. That's just like, so I think either Chris Dorner made fake IDs, which he very well could have.
Sure.
Or the police is planting them.
Yeah, I think the planting idea makes more sense. The question then is why, which is something that, again, I would encourage you to kind of hint at, if not, again, this isn't a conspiracy, this isn't JFK, but there's a lot that's going on there.
I just don't want to get so far deep that people begin to think it wasn't Chris Dorner, because there was that theory that it wasn't Chris Dorner in that house that burned down, and it wasn't him that was doing the killings. And it was Chris Dorner.
Yeah. But to me, that you're right, and that isn't the point. The point, though, is that the police had it out for this guy, and that they were going to not just shut him up, but shut him down. Not only because he was doing these violent acts, but long before then, which is what your whole script is setting up from Chris's point of view. Yeah.
Yes, and I think the critical piece for me is the BRO, the BOR. Because that chairman was good friends with Teresa. So supposedly Teresa faced the BOR and they exonerated her. So here comes Chris. How is Chris going to have a fair trial when they've already exonerated her and the chair is her friend? And then the presumption of the other courts would not let them really take a look at the case. So he was done. He was cooked at that point.
So I think again, like especially in the 2-parter or whatever it will end up to be, the series, we need to see that scene. We need to see her having drinks with him. So then when he appears later and exonerates her, we're like, that mother effer. You know what I mean? set that up for Chris, because again, you're working with such a not really delicate balance, but we never want to say that like what he did was justified in terms of the actions. But look how far that he was pressed, and look at the corruption of this organization, and how tight they were.
Exactly. This is something interesting. I saw a interview with Tancredides, or however you say his name, which is the chair of the BOR. He has a black wife, and she is a police officer. Isn't that interesting?
We need to show that. I mean, we need to see that. And you can fictionalize his name or whatever if you want, like if you're worried about that. But that's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I thought so too. Back to the two-part series. If we did 90 minutes each, I know it's different for like network or for cable or whatever. What page numbers are we talking about?
Well, I think if it's 100 pages each, that kind of thing, like I think you're good. If it ends up being 90, if it ends up being like 110 or whatever, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. Especially for cable, like you'll be fine, or streaming.
But for network, it would be a lot less, wouldn't it? Like, should I plan for network as a possibility with a lot less pages because of the commercials?
Yeah, but you could also then maybe they'll end up being 3-part or 4-part for network because of the natural commercial breaks and stuff. I would just write it with as much of the information as you want. You know what I mean?
Okay. See what it
and
breaks
not
out.
worry as much about the page number. But I think that you have easily another 60 pages you could add without it ever feeling too expansive.
Okay.
Yeah. You can do more with David. You can show more of Chris, obviously, and some of the other characters can kind of pop up. Like Teresa could be more of a character almost in here. Not that you're showing her life, but you're showing that like you're setting her up, I guess would be the way to say it. Yeah.
We're a little worried about showing Teresa without facts. Like the drinks with Tancredides. I think I could do that, and that would be fine. But she's kind of like she sued the department for discrimination over the Dorner case.
Mm-hmm.
So we think she's an active litigator on anything. So we just want to be careful in representing her.
But in terms of that, I think that what you've just said and just what happened, if it's from Chris's point of view, then you're clearly saying that it's Chris's point of view. But otherwise, the fact of who she is, of what happened to her, that she was exonerated, all that speaks for itself.
Right, and we don't really cover that, and that could be expanded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be. Not that you're even saying she's the villain, because the villain isn't a single person, as we know.
Right, exactly.
And again, villain saying that to you, it's like the audience will come up with their own ideas. Because it's really cool.
In the last voiceover, David says, Chris is a villain, but there were other villains too, and some of them had badges. I mean, Chris was not a good guy, but there were just so many other people that were bad as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, which is brilliant. So anything else that was standing out for you? Otherwise, I have some other like linear notes.
I wanted to talk about the flashback issue that I was asking you about, which is I added that piece which was, I thought that was a brilliant suggestion on what made him snap. And then I have another scene, which is the scene we talked about last week, which is where he overhears people talking bad about him, and that makes him do the manifesto. So those two scenes are not related to anybody's memory. It's Chris alone that we're peering into. Is that okay? Because I set it up. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I thought it was. It was.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like we set it up as like David or somebody is telling the story, and we flash back to see it. And on those two scenes, we have nobody that could possibly have known that to be the entrance to the flashback.
If that becomes a concern, I think the natural thing would be to fictionalize something that has truth in it, and that is that in the letter that Chris leaves for David, that only David really reads, there could be a brief mention of that.
Okay.
Almost like, I'm sorry, David, but...
Yeah.
So I think that's your out. But I didn't have a problem with it because of the way that you set it up. And I do think that you need it, both of those things.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a brilliant suggestion, really.
Well, it comes from you, not from me. But yeah.
No, I,
So anything else that you were like that you're kind of ruminating
that's
on?
yeah, just
Cool.
I'd love to hear your new notes.
Cool. Let's see. Oh, so on page 8, in rereading Teresa explaining about Chris, it feels a little bit expository now because of the way the rest of it is unfolded. So maybe it's just, Chris was my trainee 6 years ago, and that's all she says.
Okay.
But then we come back to her, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's what's cool about it. Because same with what I was saying to Julianne, I read yours from the beginning too, as though I had never read it, which
Right.
I think will help a little bit.
Yes.
So on page 17, David's line, maybe it could be, how did this come to murder?
Uh-huh.
You'll see, it's when he's first talking to the police,
Yeah.
I believe.
What's your comment? What was your comment on that?
Just that the line could be really direct, like, how did this come to murder? Like,
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On page 18, it could just go right to the Winston dialogue. You could cut David restating that he was Chris's lawyer, or his credentials can come out later, because they do. Because right now it's like 2 or 3 people ask him about it, and he says it 2 or 3 times as a result.
You're right. You're right.
No, but that, it's stuff that you just, in adding it, it'd be easier.
Yeah.
I love Evans nearly hitting the black homeless man. That was great. That's a great moment.
Okay.
And that's something that, like,
I had her be a little more scared, and we were just worried that as a cop maybe she wouldn't be so over. So I toned it down a bit for that.
Well, they're scared because something surprises you, no matter
Exactly.
what training you have, right? And then there's the other fear. Yeah.
And because he's black, she for a moment thinks it's Chris. Yeah.
Right. Yep. No, and that was what came across. So I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
On page 22, you could cut the initial Thomas-David exchange because we already know that David saw him 2 weeks prior.
Okay.
You'll see. If there's something in there that you want to keep, you could, but it'll just still reduce it a little bit.
Okay.
So on page 23, it's a minor thing, but you'll see it. So the action line should just be he answers quickly or he quickly answers it. Right now it's he picks up the phone, he quickly answers it. You doubled up.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Easy thing. Throughout the script, you mentioned Facebook like 3 times. Each time it's incorrectly spelled because the B in book isn't capitalized.
It's not.
But no, it's just Facebook all lowercase. Yeah.
And I have it capitalized. Okay.
Yeah, easy thing. The spell check probably doesn't know it.
No, I think that's my human error.
Yeah. We'll blame Mary. I'm just kidding.
She's like the PhD in English. I think it's me.
Fair enough. That's awesome. Page 36. I don't know that you need the childhood flashback to him being called the N-word on the playground. It's not bad. I just don't know that you need it in the scene.
Okay, so I put it in because I was trying to show that like his entire life has been this trying to deal with people who are in his face with racism. It's not just, and he mentions it in the manifesto, how he was the only black kid in like every school he ever attended. And I thought it was interesting that he got spanked for reacting to it, which is what happens later. He gets fired for reacting to racism. Yeah.
So in the expanded limited series, then I want to see that whole scene. But for the feature, just the quick reference to it, I would rather he state it. You know what I mean? I've been dealing with this fucking shit my whole life. You know, like one of those.
Okay, so
Does that make sense to say it that way? And you know me, I'm not like anti-flashback at all, but
right. Okay.
So then on page 71, after David states that he should have gotten his job back, you could just cut the rest of that scene until the top of page 72. You'll see when you go back over it that there's just some other dialogue there that maybe isn't needed.
Okay, after he should have gotten his job back, cut rest of scene.
Yep, until like roughly the top of page 72. You'll see when you reread it the natural transition.
Okay.
And it's possible maybe I missed something that was a key point. So if you need to keep it, keep it. But
Okay.
I'm just looking at places where you can, you know,
Yes, because we're a little heavy right now for feature.
a little bit, not much. But I think some of this will do it in
Yeah.
a simple way and keep it. Yeah.
Right.
Page 76, I wrote agree. I think just I'm sorry, and then Chris replies, I'm done for. I'd have to go reread the page, but write it down. It'll make sense, I'm sure.
So are you saying to cut that dialogue scene? Is that what your point is?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So just I'm sorry, I'm done for? I do
Yeah.
remember that goes on further than that, so I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. On the bottom of page 78, it could be something like, you know, those motherfuckers took everything I tried in court for 6 fucking years. All I wanted was justice in my job. Now it's war. I think you could really just kind of boom, boom, boom.
Okay, do that. Give me that again.
So it's Chris, and this is when he obviously snaps. He could say, those motherfuckers took everything. I tried in court for 6 fucking years. All I wanted was justice and my job. Now it's war.
Okay. Did you leave out peacefully? Isn't there a
Yeah,
line
because
there?
we know it was peaceful. You know what I
So
mean?
all right, and that's fine because we did discuss that. But I tried peacefully. Now it's war.
Yeah, that's true. I like that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, got it.
It could be I tried it peacefully in court, 6
Right.
years. Yeah. The other way to do it, which might work even better, is David has his voiceover, the speech on page 79. So you can
Right.
have Chris making his decision over David's voiceover. Does that make sense? But I think if you play the two together and then have Chris decide, like that's kind of cool.
Okay.
You'll know what I mean even more when you reread it, but
Okay.
on page 80, David can just say, I like cops, just not bad ones. I think you could cut the rest of his mini
Okay.
speech.
He goes on to talk about how he's represented unions and stuff, the cops.
But
Is that?
we kind of know that about him, so again.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of clear, he's cooperating with him. I never got the sense he's antagonistic.
And
He
he
believes
actually
Chris got it.
called them,
Yeah.
He called them to say, hey.
Yeah. I think he believes this, we all would. I think that Chris got a bad shake, that's for sure. But he doesn't blame the whole LAPD, I don't think. I don't get that sense.
It's interesting at the end scene when they are saying goodbye, when he comes to pick up the disc. David's note, that scene is accurate, but he was much more polite and kind to me than you said. So I thought that was really interesting, that was David's memory was like Chris was much more appreciative and kind to him on that last scene where we know already what's going on inside.
Yeah. Wow.
It's just interesting.
A couple more things. You guys have probably played with this too, and I would, after you're talking with David, it would make sense, but hear me out on this. So the Gettler test, right? The
Yeah.
guy who was assaulted. I don't know how helpful that scene is to Chris. Like, to me, the pictures that you showed me were great, the real ones, but the testimony, like, he's clearly, there's something, loose, shall we say, there. And so I don't see how that helps him. And so it's a longer scene. It's pages 80 to 83. I don't know that you necessarily even need it, or you could cut some of it.
The testimony of Gettler.
Yeah, I know that was a key piece that they chose to leave out, and that I get what that frames. It's like we didn't get to show all of the evidence. That's true. However, I don't know that evidence would have helped because the guy's a very unreliable narrator.
But he has a scar. He told his dad he was kicked, and he admits he was kicked by a female police officer. I mean, that's pretty clear. The one confusion is what she was, he says she was black, because she was wearing dark clothes, which that's really the only piece I think that anybody would be, and you saw the picture, like he's completely muddy and bloody, and along with his dad's testimony and his testimony, I'm shocked that they even had a question. But you're saying you felt like he was unreliable in his testimony.
I think so. I think the pictures were absolutely reliable, and I think the fact he told his father is a bit of evidence. The rest of it, though, calls into question anything that the guy would say.
But he said a female officer kicked him. How would that?
But he says it was a black female officer. You know what I mean? It's just like I could see another lawyer picking the hell out of that, which is probably beneficial in a weird way that didn't even get admitted. Because it would come out like the visual evidence is clear. Someone beat this guy, no question.
But the only two people there, she was the only female officer there. It had to be her.
I get it. I'm just saying this.
I'm arguing against the idea that it's not believable because it seems so believable to me. But I do agree that scene goes on very long, so I could definitely cut that.
Yeah, I would just look at it and see if you could maybe, keep the parts that are really relevant to it, which are those two major points, because those are really major.
Okay.
Yeah, each time I've read it, though, I kind of go, I don't know about this guy, for myself, like trying to be objective.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But again, the visual evidence is ridiculously clear. This guy was beat. Well, who did it? Which is to your question. There was two choices, Chris or her. Yeah. So another thing, the Chris and Susan scene, like up towards the end, you could lose it. The only kind of point is the phrase "nothing to lose" that comes out of it. The connection to her, I don't think matters. Not if it's a feature. If it's the mini series, then I think you want to keep her in because she's interesting, and she's
one of the reasons
got her own issues.
I think I agree with you. One of the reasons we left it in is because it kind of shows that he's deteriorating.
It does, but I think we get that point anyway. Okay. Again, in the feature, I don't feel that way for this limited series.
Okay.
And what do you personally think now that you've gone over and over this, and what does David think about him killing himself, which is what they say, that it was self-inflicted single shot?
Yeah. That's a little suspicious as well. I think it's very possible, but it just doesn't seem like his character to me that he would kill himself. Yeah. But just because they heard the single shot, like, I mean, there's one in his head, but how would they know? And his body was completely singed, it was completely burned. So you wouldn't have the same kind of evidence of a suicide, where the body falls, the gun's in your hand or whatever. Everything was toast. So right. I don't know. That's a question for sure. One of those conspiracy things. How did he last so long in there with the gas? I think that's an interesting. And again, I explain it by the tanks that he bought, the oxygen tank. I read one report where he shot one of the tanks, which would have created a big explosion. I didn't put that in because I've only seen it in one place. Oh, get this, Justin. We applied with for the Freedom of Information Act to get the records.
Miles? Yeah.
Yeah, and we said we wanted Chris Dorner's records. They sent back, we don't know who Chris Dorner is. Ha! So we had to send back more information, like his birth date and stuff like that. But we thought that was just totally messing with us. They know who Chris Dorner is. But we had to do it. They made us do it twice with some specific more details. But anyway, we're going to get their internal stuff and just as a double check on what we've got.
Yeah, because it almost seems like now, having gone over it and read some other things too, both news articles and these weird conspiracy things, that, somehow they got into the cabin and someone shot him in the back of the head, almost mob style, and then burned the body and planted the wallet. I mean, It just seems pretty obvious that that's what happened.
It seems likely. I don't know, because there was one reporter from, is it KCBS? Is that your channel out there? There was one reporter, Carter Evans, that somehow got to the scene. They pushed all the other reporters, even the helicopters back. Nobody could come in, but he was on the scene. Everybody else was and they told him to leave eventually, but everybody else was a cop. So it would have been very easy. There would have been nobody to say differently what went on.
Right. And that's the interesting thing. It almost is like maybe they went in under the guise that they were going to give him what he wanted and talk to him. And when they got in there, they shot him. And then, there's no question.
I think Chris would have known they're not going to give him anything. I mean, I think Chris probably would not have fallen. I think he was going to fight to the end. It was like,
I think, but there's something that happened. There has to be. It's just
I don't think he would have killed himself unless, I really don't. I think he would have just kept fighting, but.
Yeah, I mean, unless he felt that they were closing in, and then what does that look like? Then he's in jail, Maybe then that's the only moment I could see him saying, I'm going to do it myself. I'm not going to let them.
Right. Supposedly there was a Glock at the scene that they recovered, which I think could have been his suicide weapon.
Yeah, but again, pretty convenient, and then the wallet's fine. Yeah.
And the wallet's fine with his ID, yeah.
Yeah, and again, the examiner is like, it's going to take weeks, 2 days. Yep, it's Chris.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I've heard they did his dental records, but then I heard they did his bone DNA because that was about all that was left.
Right.
But I couldn't confirm the bone DNA, so we left it out and just went with dental records. But I think that's a possibility as well, that they did both of those to identify him.
I think so too. And in the little research I did with the LA Times and some of the national media that covered it, they all have the same report from 2 days later that it was 100% Chris. And I believe that the account is both, that it was the dental records and then bone fragment DNA. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So where am I at in terms of this 1 to 10? Am I past a 6?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right, good.
For sure. Yeah. Do you feel that you are? You should, I think, at this point.
I do, but when you work on something for so long, like I think about it even when I'm not writing it, you begin to wonder how other people see it. I think that's a writer's folly. You begin to just see the connections with that somebody reading it might not see the connections or might not understand something. And so you wonder how would somebody else view it?
Yeah, but even in these, however brief, like moments we're talking about expanding on certain things, like Teresa and his childhood, that kind of thing. I think any lingering question would be answered even more by some of those moments. Yeah.
Yes, there's just so much. It's just completely packed. I do wonder sometimes if like his graduation is important, that scene.
I thought that too, rereading it. The only thing I like about it is it shows how many accommodations he got and what a stellar soldier and cop, then depending on which where he was. So.
And I don't know if you got I read that the only thing they ever complained about Chris was that he was a little overweight. So
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting that, here's a pretty good soldier and they're going to complain that he's a little overweight. So I put that in when he's marching, and he feels so good about himself because he's doing very well. And they say, don't get cocky. You need to lose some pounds. It's like, no matter what he does, no matter where he's trying to get his success and pride, they're going to put him down.
Yeah, he was always needs for improvement, right? Just like his record.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was a bigger guy. Like all the pictures I've seen of him. I mean, yeah. I don't know that I would have been overweight, but in terms of a cop, sure, I get it. Or a soldier.
I think he looks like a cop. I think he looks, that he's got that barrel chest, stomach, that, like, yeah.
What American cops aren't overweight?
What's that?
What American cops aren't overweight?
Well, I will say this, and maybe it's just because of the sun and the climate, but a lot of the LAPD, they're not big people in that sense. There is a lot of like really lean, in shape LAPD. So
Interesting about Teresa, she was 5'2" and 115 pounds. She was a tiny thing.
Yeah, which is also fascinating in terms of like what she was capable of. Yeah.
It is, because I think women generally in places of authority have to prove themselves, and they often go over to prove themselves to be tough. And then if you are a smaller person, she might have gone quicker to the tasing and the physical violence.
Yeah, I think for both reasons. She's small and physically not as threatening, or she can't even defend herself to the same degree. And she's a woman. Let's be real. Like there's still that other vulnerability, and that's not a sexist comment. It's just a true one. 5'2", 115, male or female. Like there's vulnerability.
We have to prove ourselves even more if we look like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, exactly.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Justin. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So who's next of the other three lovely folks? Somebody pop on. Shannon, you want to go? Cool. I actually have yours up next. Yeah, there we go. Are you unmuted?
No, I am.
There
That's
we go.
probably what most people would like to do, is to say, oh, she's muted. That's perfect.
I don't think anybody here would say that, but fair enough. So I looked over both High Justice and then Byrne and the changes. Julianne, that's awesome. That was funny. Cool. So do you want to talk about Byrne first?
Yes, and I noticed that when I was adjusting where Victoria and old Sheriff Dan meet, I only sent one of the scenes and not both of them, so I fixed that already. Just FYI.
Okay, cool. So if I bring that up, then we know that that's fixed.
Okay.
So I only have kind of minor things, at least I hope that they're minor. So page 15, instead of her saying maybe forget about it, which she has now, maybe she just laughs. Or she says, don't let them pressure you, or something. It depends what you want to say kind of about her character. I like either one kind of those things.
Maybe I'll just have her not say anything. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I said forget about it because that tracked what her mom said to her when she was trying to sleep after she was burned. But if that's not connecting, then I'm taking it out.
Oh, interesting. I like that. I might have missed it, but yeah, that's cool. I think then what you would do in the writing is if she says forget about it, then mom kind of reacts because she remembers saying it, to just add that little beat for the actress and the reader. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. I like that. And then she could wink. I'm just kidding. Then it automatically makes her awful. So Jackson's accident, I like how you've shaped it. It now reads more clear than it did before. The only thing that you'd want to add now is just a sentence that when he swerves from the body that he sees, the person, the outline of the person in the road, he runs right into the fence. You know,
Okay.
because you still wouldn't swerve and hit something that was in the road. You'd be swerving again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. I'll see if I can keep that. That's so, I've been in a car wreck. I should know how to make this work, but it's just all those little moving pieces. Okay. So, okay, I can do that.
Yeah. So the real question about it is, if that, let's just say the fence is laying in the road, right? And then he sees there's a firework that goes off, which is going to draw your attention away from what you already know is in the road. And then you see a person. I don't know that even in that quick reaction, how would I say? The point is, yeah, you would avoid the person and you'd wreck your car to avoid a person. So that's what you're setting up, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'll see if I'll try to make that clearer.
Yeah, just one. It's just going to take one little tweak and you've got it. So you're almost there.
Yay. Okay.
On page 50, instead of having them say no sway 3 times, maybe the second one, she just looks at her mom, or she says mama, like really sharply, whatever, something like that, if you like it.
Okay. Probably, I think.
We're trying to pressure her.
I thought 3 was too many times too, but I kind of thought that was cool. No sway. I'm not, no sway. Okay.
No, I like it. Maybe just twice, and like I said, that middle one is like mama, no sway,
Yeah.
something like that.
I'll figure that out. Okay. I thought that's a fun word. That's a really weird word for somebody to say. That's not, you know what I mean? So I thought that's just kind of.
Yeah, I liked it for the same reason. I was like, ooh, interesting, because, yeah.
Because that's kind of, Okay.
So on page 78, you could cut her saying, I am lightning, only because there's not really a reference for it before.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it was bad, it's just it kind of goes, what? For the reader or the audience.
Okay. I'll just take it out. I don't think she needs to say it. So you're kind of overreaching as you're writing, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll try. See how it goes.
Yeah, but I get what you wanted the moment to be, 100%. But her just being menacing and laughing in the face of fire and destruction and all that's going on is probably enough.
Yeah, I think that I agree. Okay.
So on page 81, I like where you're going with this, but when you review the dialogue, maybe just minor tweaks and smooth it out. This is between Jethro and her. For example, Jethro could say something like, we're marked by the same fire, not necessarily point to his scar. It's like we're marked, and you could just be like, see, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I did that. I looked at that again and went, so I think I've actually made that change, but I'll double check.
Oh, cool. Good. On the bottom of page 87, it could be just, it's yours, versus you kind of had a little bit more there than that.
Okay.
The rest of the things that you had highlighted and changed, I loved them. So I would keep everything else. I thought it made it even smoother and more clear. And the ending with the Hog Syndicate now, and then going back to poor Marge or whatever. It was awesome.
I really like ending on Marge, because we do kind of forget about her, and you're like, oh my God, this woman is bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you've earned her doing that, if that's the way to say it. So
good. Okay, so I feel pretty good about it. I'll make these changes, and I guess I'll let it sit for a while. Julianne and I have been trying to figure out what the log line should look like. So I've written it 4,212 times. So I thought, if you don't mind, next week I'll send you a couple of versions of the log line that I'm trying to do.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
It's so pretty good about them. Yeah.
Okay, because it should have a very straightforward. It shouldn't be a long log line. There's not a lot to say, right? She's bad. She figures out she's bad. There's something horrible happening in her life. She goes and takes everybody out and discovers who she is. But I'll send it to you, because it's just log lines are so fun and frustrating at the same time. So if you don't mind, I'll send you a couple of options that I have. And then I thought I'd mention Joey has a new pitch prep for Top Tier, and so I popped into it the other day and said, I've not pitched this at all, so I'm just going off the cuff. And after I finished, it was dead silence. And then he just says, oh my God, that is fucked up. I'm like, Yes. I hope that's a positive. I was like, okay.
You're like, score. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. Like, yes, that's the point. Okay. Okay, what do you think about Monster as a comp? Charlize Theron won an Oscar for that, and that movie is about a prostitute who becomes a serial killer. It's not technically the same. I just wonder what you're thinking about. Okay, you don't like it. All right.
No. It's not that. I'm trying to think if it.
The only reason I thought of it is because Sadie truly is a monster.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very disturbed human being, period.
When you think of Monster, right, the film, do you think that it's portraying Charlize as a monster that's unleashed or grows to be into one, or do you think it's kind of saying that she was a monster and it just shifted in terms of her monstrousness?
Okay, those are all good questions. I'm going to go watch it again and see if I think it is close at all. Because
then what I think you could say is like the character arc, or the character transformation of Monster meets blah blah blah.
okay, those are my last hard projects here. Is figuring out a succinct log line, because I don't want to give away the hard right turn in this movie at all.
Right. No,
So I don't want to do that. But convey the dynamics of really what we're dealing with. And then trying to get the comps in a good spot. Because, I mean, it's not like this is the only movie that's ever been made like this, but for some reason normally I know right away it's this and this, but I'm just having a little bit harder time doing that. But, okay. So thank you.
I don't think this is the right comp, but you also have kind of a turn of character similar to something like Primal Fear. It's like we think that we're watching someone who's a victim, and it's like, oh no, they're much more than that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Gosh, just seems like it should be easier than this. But okay, I'm going to look at all of those, and maybe I'll send you a couple of versions of the log line and some different ways. Okay.
Yeah. No, please. That usually comes pretty easily for me, especially if I have like choices to look at. It's like, ooh, let's take this, and
okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that comes that easily for me, but I do think it's been easier than this one. I'm just constantly going this, that, no, this, that, no. But anyway, and I want it to be super clear. I just, because I feel like she's an interesting character for somebody to possibly want to play. And so I want to make sure when I'm trying to push it out to people that it conveys that a little bit. So that's okay.
Yep. And I would say instinctively or intuitively that you probably want to shape the log line from the point of view that we're going into the story with, which is like the bad version off the cuff would be like an accident when she's 5 comes full circle when blah, blah, blah happens in her town. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a better way already than what I had. Okay. I'm going to write that down.
So.
Yeah, well, good, because I'm going to need it. I'm just frustrated that it's not coming easily to me, but that's okay. We'll get there. Okay, I'll make these notes, and then you don't feel like you need to see it again, because I was thinking about finding somebody who can look at it from like a proofreading. I'm not the best proofreader, and as Julianne says, I'm a self-taught typist, which means there are typos everywhere. So if you don't need to see it again, I thought I might send it to somebody who could do proofreading for me, just so I can make sure it's clean and clear.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally up to you. I'd be happy to do that too if you'd rather. But if you want to focus on something else for the last, session that we have next week, we can do that too. So whichever.
Okay, well, I'll think about that. Almost don't feel it's appropriate to have you do my typo review, because you're like a major, awesome, phenomenally fantastic, like collaborative partner helping us get this done. That just seems like so. Anyway.
Well,
okay.
That's part of the collaboration too. I'll just throw that out. So whatever you want to do, that you maximize the time,
Okay.
So.
Okay. I might do that then. Then
Yeah.
I just wanted to send you High Justice, just because I think I might want to do that next, but I'm at the point where I really would I can write whatever I want to write, but I just feel like I should write things that might be either good samples or somebody might be interested in acquiring or buying or whatever. So, what do you think just from a 30,000 square foot or 30,000 foot view?
Well, I like that was cute. Well said. I like the setup for it a lot. I think that it could play as a really contained thriller, right? Which is what you set out to do. There are some, not holes in it, but questions I would have to then tighten that up. But like the log line for it and where you're wanting to go with it, I think is tremendous, and it could be a lot of fun. It's almost like 12 Angry Men in the Sky, like with some other twist to it, which is cool. I think that's cool.
Okay. So I might this week just sort of play with it. I know it's got a lot of holes in it. It's just, it's just an idea.
Yeah, well, you're just starting to put it down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I might try to work on that a little bit this week and just see if, because I'm either going to do that or, I'm working on a TV pilot. With Julianne and I just finished Fornicakes. That web series is done and ready to get out, and very excited about that. We wrote season 1. Did I tell you this already? Fornicakes is a half-hour, well-announced web series comedy pilot about 2 women who aren't any good at anything, but one thinks she's good at sex, and the other one thinks she's good at baking, and the one that thinks she's good at sex is not, and the other one is really good at baking, and they open an erotic baked goods store, hoping to make ends meet.
Oh yeah, you were telling me. I remember now. Okay.
Yeah, it is completely finished. Right, season 1 is in the can, and we're getting ready to. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but I guess pitch it and try to sell it because it's freaking hilarious. And then the next thing I would do, I'm working on a TV pilot called Witch Bitch Whore, which it's for fun and it makes me happy. And it's a comedy pilot as well. It's about I think I'm gonna make it a musical. It's about 3 3 young women they quit college when they figured out they were internet famous, and now they're trying to monetize that, and their outside lives are perfect and their inside lives are completely a mess. And it's a comedy.
That's happening. Yeah. Fun.
So it's either one or those two. So I was thinking, I've got plenty of, I think, really nice TV pilots that I've written. I think High Justice is the one I really want to do that makes some sense. And
well, it does. I can give you kind of some of the questions to look at because I'll just throw them out to you. So when you go in, you have them in your mind. They're probably the same as what you would have, right? But just again, for me, reading it from the outside.
Great.
First of all, Connor or Cooper, because you have it mixed up all through. So just decide on which one you want. Easy thing, but you would have found that.
I don't like either of those.
Yeah, it made sense that it was you. I knew who you were talking about, so don't worry. It should be 30,000 feet. I think you had 30,000 with an extra 0. Again, you would have seen that. So just to be clear, David sneaks on the plane and he's assumed to be Jack the pilot. That's how he's able to get on because people see him and think that from behind it was the pilot, right? So he can kind of hide out there. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. That makes sense. The main question is Connor's crime enough?
That's a fair point. I don't know.
Because it's almost an understandable break, because if he's 19 and he married young, and then all of a sudden his life's thrown into chaos, not that it justifies violence, but you know what I mean? We want to really kind of date him, I think.
So probably age him up and then make him a more complex character, because there's not a whole lot to any of these people right now. They're just sort of placeholders for an idea.
Sure.
But I do like him being that young, or do you think it's better to age him up to someone whose behavior he should be old enough and his brain should be mature enough to understand the right from wrong for real?
Yeah, it's like the difference between 24, for example, and 19 is kind of a lot. That sense. Yeah. But I like him being younger. He's not 50, right? So another question is, just to be clear about why a Marshal would be on a private jet for what you have as like kind of timeshare holders. It seems like a strange mix that they would endanger potentially them I know that they do that on some commercial liners, and they just don't ever tell us as the passengers.
Yes,
And
they
I
don't.
like that it's a private jet. I do. But it's just making sure the juxtaposition of who's on the plane makes sense.
You know, I think I had something in mind to address that, but I don't even remember what it is. And I could have put them on a commercial jet, but I like the smaller jet because
No,
they're
I
like,
do too. I think that's smart.
Okay.
It also
I'll
is going
figure
to
that
make
out, or-
us almost claustrophobic as we watch it, which is a good thing.
yeah. I'll figure that out. I think I know the answer to that somewhere in the back of my head, but I can't remember.
Okay. And then as you go, explain what it means that he has, that David, that is, has hair like Jack's, which is what Connor saw, or Cooper, whichever name you want to use. Just expand on that. And finding some of the witnesses via Wi-Fi, that to me would automatically alert the authorities, because if there's a connection to something outside of the plane itself, the natural thing would be that one of them at least got a hold. So there's a posse waiting when this plane lands, which you could do, and I think that's kind of cool, because it's like, everything changes once they hit the ground, so they have to stay in the air, which then makes
Right.
the fuel really important, and those things that you alluded to in there.
Yeah, we definitely have a ticking clock on this one.
Which is cool. Again, I think that you're onto something. And
Okay.
then what is David's purpose of being there?
I don't know. I was looking at it this morning going, I don't know what he's doing there. If I remember
Sure.
correctly, I can't remember. I have some notes that are a little bit probably more helpful, but they're just chicken scratches on the back of a notepad. So I'll address that. There is a reason he's there, and I can't remember. I think I had like a triangle, like the pilot, David, and Sarah, and that there was going to be a triangle there that mattered to her, which made her have to adjust how she's handling the trial without that. I don't know. I'll figure that out.
Yeah, and it could be too that the bad version would be that David somehow connected to Cooper or Connor, meaning like he's either supposed to take him out, or he was a victim of something, or he's the brother to the person that was killed. Those kind of things you could play with too, where it makes him a potential either threat or connective tissue as you're thinking.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah, he definitely needs to be that. So I'll figure that out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fun. Well, keep me
Well, this should
posted.
be fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
this should be fun.
Yeah.
I do like the
Another-
idea of the fuel's going to run out, everyone's smushed together. I don't know. I see your point about the Wi-Fi alerting people on the ground, and I think in my head I could see some fighter planes coming along or whatever, and they're trying to push them back. Don't let them know you're there, and so they know it's happening on the ground. And
Yeah.
so, okay.
Which again adds to stakes. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start working on this, and thanks a bunch. I appreciate your notes.
Of course. As always. Cool. Wendy, does that mean you want to go next?
Yeah, and Shannon, are you still on? Maybe.
Yep.
I was just gonna say, like, maybe a happy medium between private and scheduled. Like, I don't know where you are, but in SoCal we have something called Jet Suite X, which is actually like the JetBlue. It's a JetBlue subsidiary, but they fly like 30-seat jets, like out of Burbank to Vegas, and
Yeah.
so that could be a happy medium.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. So Wendy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I finally feel like I'm in a normalized schedule. The kitten is napping.
There you go.
Yeah, I got myself into a lot.
Yeah. No, I get it. That happens. And so I'm glad it's smoothing out in terms of your own sanity and time.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm slowly getting the cohesive what's going to hold this thing together.
I have some potentially exciting rabbit hole that I went down with some of the questions that you pose. So hopefully, I
Okay.
think it will yield something that will be a lot of fun for you, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
So going back through the actual pages, on the top of page 16, I think you can cut Arlo saying, "I wish I knew." Maybe just leave it hanging in terms of, him talking to her about like the pack and who it is and what their agenda might be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I really like the change to David asking her to dinner. It's much smoother. It works really well. It seems super organic, and he just addresses the elephant in the room like, no, this isn't creepy or a date. It's like, I really genuinely want to know you. On page 24, wouldn't she ask, will he make it? Not assume that he wouldn't.
Okay.
And a question for you, why does the group give their blood to Emily? Like, why would they say yes to her asking about that?
That did feel retroactively a little fast, and that's where, as I was building through, I was thinking like, okay, what are the rites of passage for joining the werewolf pack? Because I don't think they would give that until a little bit later.
Yeah.
But
or if there was something, and this is not necessarily right, but if there was something threatening them, that they weren't aware of, and you know what I mean, maybe then they would, if it meant their harm, versus just, here's this woman that, yes, she's one of us, but she doesn't understand us yet, like you're thinking. So, not that it necessarily needs to come out, but what would you imagine the police think is the motive for such a personalized death as Arlo?
That's a good.
Yeah, just
That's
something
a
to think about. Not again that you want to have the police involved so much, but
Yeah. I'm kind of wondering if, as I mean, all of that stuff, as bizarre as it sounds, would be stuff that Arlo has.
Yeah.
Although I'm wondering, like, maybe, I mean, either robbery or they would be upset about the taxidermy.
Maybe. It just seems, again, just as a backdrop, it's important, I think, that you would ask that question. And maybe it's just unsolvable for them. It's like he didn't really have any enemies. He was this, relative loner who did his taxidermy for people that wanted or needed such things, and he kept out of everyone's way, kind of. Which is
and he was just like the outdoorsman, and I feel like for him,
full of arrows.
yeah.
Not saying you should do this, but you could do something where later it's like the police discover an actual wolf, like shot up the same way, like that kind of thing. But, yeah. In here, are you wanting to bring out any of the differences between a lichen and a werewolf, or not necessarily?
Not
Just
really.
curious.
I'm using them interchangeably, and I probably need to be more careful.
Yeah, and I don't know a huge amount about the lore and kind of the differences, but yeah, just throwing that out to you. So, do you think that in your mind is she kind of forming a database in the same way that like they allude to in X-Men? Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of like who has the genetic disposition toward being a werewolf or not?
I think it might be, well, Emily is wanting to know just for her own curiosity,
Right.
and also for this, and that's something that I was playing with, that I was writing later on in my outline, was this idea that actually, because there are beneficial viruses out there.
Yeah.
And the idea that they could market a beneficial virus as like a trauma treatment.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that if you don't particularly have the receptors, all a werewolf bite would do to you would be like a short-term energy and strength boost.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if your body can't replicate the virus, that's all.
Yeah. No, I think you're onto something with that. It's because that would make a lot of sense. Maybe a werewolf heals 10 times faster than a regular human would too. So like you could end up curing people from long-term illnesses just by giving them that boost if they were able to, you know.
Yeah, I really see it as potentially something good for trauma, like wasting diseases. I don't think so much, because I think you would have, and it's been kind of funny with this kitten around, and she was so skinny.
Yeah.
And it's like, she probably could not take werewolf blood. It would have been too much for her.
Right. That's funny. Let's not do that.
Place. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
So, but like, or like somebody with a wasting disease, it wouldn't be beneficial. But like,
yes,
an otherwise healthy person who got into an accident, I think it would be amazing.
It might be interesting too, and again, not that you're making it a, for lack of a better word, semi-political or like a nod to our current state of affairs in terms of health, but you mentioned HIV when she's talking about retroviruses and viruses in general, which makes a lot of sense. What if a werewolf could never contract HIV because their cells are so strong that HIV literally bounces off of them, which is the thing that they're looking at now. In HIV treatment, they're looking at empowering the cells so that HIV has nowhere to go and dies in the system. Like that's the most basic version of the science. So what if this is a potential cure for, or preventer rather, for HIV? Just something to think about too.
Huh, interesting. Well, one of the things in my research that I was going through was that there are some people who just don't, and that was where I was getting to like the receptors for the virus.
Yes.
There are some people who just don't have the HIV receptor.
Correct. Yeah.
How old is HIV? Like maybe 40, 50 years old?
Well, they think that it first appeared in the 60s, the 50s or 60s, but it didn't come into the United States till the 70s, and then we didn't discover it until 1980, 81. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. But you know, so that's a new thing. But there's already a few people who don't have the receptors, and I think the werewolf blood is 10, 15,000 years old. So I think that probably a lot of, because I think it's powerful, but it's perilous, and probably a lot of people are. You know, I think a lot of people who have this do die a little bit young because they get themselves into trouble in one way or the other. So I think that the people who have the receptors, the numbers have thinned a little bit. So.
Yeah, no, interesting stuff to play with for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm almost ready to give you the research I found, which is I hope it's as fun for you to hear as it was for me to find it. Because I literally could have spent probably an hour like diving deeper, but I'm like, no, this is Wendy's, I'll give it to her, she'll do what she wants with it. But before I get to that, you mentioned in there that you wanted there to be like a twist of a sort, and you weren't sure necessarily what that was. What do you think that you'd want the outcome of that twist to be? And if you don't have necessarily an idea of that, then I have an idea for you, but I'll throw it out to you first.
Go ahead, because I haven't thought that far in advance yet.
Cool. So one thing might be something like this, right? What if David was like a vampire wolf hybrid or something? Like what if he is really ancient and he's actually using Emily for a database? What if he's using it to literally hunt down every werewolf, which is what you're alluding to him being? But what if it's almost like he's the ultimate lone wolf? You know, kind of like when we were talking early on about this idea that wolves and coyotes don't get along. That's where I was going with the vampire angle, and I don't think he should be a vampire, but you get what I mean. He's almost like something else. He's like the ultimate alpha. And so his goal is to find them and destroy them so that he can be left by himself. Something like that. That might be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Vampires definitely go underworld, but maybe something else supernatural.
Yeah, that's why that was, again, I'm not saying that's right. The thing I liked about it, vampires, that they live forever, that's the only component that made sense. By
Or
not
like-
saying.
Mm-hmm. A long line of wolf hunters.
Yeah. Who then somehow have, I think play with something like that. There's something cool there. And I think definitely the pack should have a ritual rite of entry, which you were saying that you agree with that. To come alongside you, though, I think that's great. The funder of the whole project could be a bad guy, too. Because you were saying that you wanted, like, either David to have some other henchman or someone else besides kind of the focal point. So just an idea of another person it could be that you set up in here just by nature, but we haven't met them yet. So interesting if you like that.
Yeah. I feel like we need somebody who's kind of, on the mean side at that company to balance and hide David a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to give you this this stuff that I found. There was something in reading your notes in the outline of kind of things that you want to go that triggered not memory, but a visual thing for me. And I was curious as to, I seem to remember something in regard to werewolves in particular and the Nazis. And I found a whole treasure trove of very real stuff. You probably know about some of it. But did you know that Nazi military headquarters was called Werewolf?
Yeah, like Wolfstan.
No, the actual name is WERWOLF. And there was actually this entire resistance group called Werewolves. And it was right up at the end of the war, and the idea was that there was going to be this hidden resistance force that operated behind enemy lines as the Allies advanced. So it's like you think that you're taking down the Nazis, but we're actually part of the French countryside, and we're going to still be there to overtake you. And the thing I liked about that for you is that the wolves are part of our society. And what if the goal of David or whoever is to create kind of the resistance force, you know what I mean, from within? I think that there's a cool parallel without this ever becoming a Nazi movie. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, David could be like the wolf supremacist.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I felt like that might be the hint of something really cool. I don't know if you knew this too, but do you know what Hitler's nickname was?
Oh, God.
Wolf.
Wolf, yeah.
Yeah.
I
obviously
was aware there was a lot of, I was aware there was a lot of like wolf imagery in there, and I was like, how far do I want to dive into that?
Well, I'll tell you more where some of it comes from too, and then, like I said, you can go off and take little parts or whatever. But if the idea of Hitler, which one of them was that he was trying to get this perfect race, you already have that in here with like the genetics involved in her capturing wolf's blood and trying to track them down. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of really, what if David or whoever is continuing that effort without it, again, being tied to Nazism per se, or you could if you wanted to. On March 23rd, 1945, Goebbels gave what is referred to as the werewolf speech, which is tremendous. There was actually a radio werewolf as well in Nazi Germany. They actually had a song that would come up. The lyrics were, "My werewolf teeth bite the enemy, and then he's done, and then he's gone." And then they would howl like a wolf. I mean, there's all this stuff that's connected to the Nazis, and most of it is based on this book from 1910 called Der Werewolf, that had some of these same ideas about a resistance group that had infiltrated behind enemy lines as the other force advanced to take back the country. Mm-hmm. So I think there's something really great to play with that you already kind of have in here.
And I sort of like the, I'll have to play with that because I like the idea of like the supremacist wolf versus sort of the modern diverse wolf packs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah,
the
and-
supremacist wolf doesn't want to admit that the wolf gene is all over the world.
Exactly. And they want a pure version of it like it used to be, all those things that are, that play into exactly what we're both talking about. The last thing I would tell you that I found fascinating too is Donald Rumsfeld, right, our former Secretary of Defense, used the same term to refer to the Iraqis during the Iraqi war, talk about them as werewolves, using the same element of the Nazis that we're talking about too. It's crazy how it all tied together. I couldn't believe it. I'd never heard all of that before.
Yeah. I had known a little bit, like, I don't want to make it a Nazi movie per se, but I think like the racism and classism is an interesting place to play.
Agreed. Yeah, and that was the point. It happened to be really closely tied to something awful, really, right?
Yeah.
But if you look up WERWOLF, you'll have a field day going off with some of these things. So have fun with it for sure.
So
Cool. Anything else from you? Otherwise, those were my notes. But I think you're starting to really go in a good direction.
yeah, I feel like I'm going in a good direction, and I'm just going to try to push out as many pages as I can this week, and hopefully things stay calm.
They will. I've talked to Calypso, and she's promised she's going to be good. So.
Okay. Yeah. As long as she's just good and playful, and
Yes.
I've got to figure out when I'm going to put her, because she's still in a small playpen. And it's like, when does she graduate to the big kitten quarters?
She'll let you know. When she doubles in size again this week, she'll probably be ready.
That would be kind of crazy. Well, ragdolls, because my guess is that she's probably like a backyard breeder kitten, and they didn't want to put the work into her.
Yeah.
So, but ragdolls are big. So that's what I'm guessing she is. So,
Yeah. No, you're probably right.
She could end up being 10, 11 pounds.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, we probably won't get to see her get to be that big on this incubator, but yes.
But maybe the incubator next year, we can do it before and after.
There she is.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Are you going to be incubating more or taking a break?
I will. I don't know. I don't have another one lined up like for August yet. I don't think an incubator. But yeah, so if not August, I would imagine maybe September or October. I will be. But yeah, check in with me via email if you want, or obviously you can ask Joey too. But I don't know that they set up the incubators per se for August, not to my knowledge, or maybe they did and they left me out, understandably, for a month.
Shut up, dude. He mentioned it this week, but that was like yesterday or something. He mentioned there would be an incubator.
Yeah,
but doesn't. He just hasn't hassled you yet. That's what's going on.
Julianne just said they weren't set up. Yeah, that's probably right.
I was gonna poke him and figure out who's working when. Just because I have to do either Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So that limits my choices a bit.
Yeah, no, I hear you. In that sense, even for me, scheduling it from the other side, it's the same. Like there's only certain times that kind of are easier for me to be able to commit to for everybody's sake, my own very much included. So.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Shannon, Shannon, you win. I'm giving you a gold star. Justin's the best choice. Thank you. It's very sweet.
Yeah,
Woohoo!
Mark,
Gold
it's like
star.
I can see I totally get from living in Oregon, get all the sun you can while you can.
Oh, for Marty? Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
It's not about the sun, it's about the surf.
But the two are connected. You don't want to go.
I know, I can't avoid it.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. So anyway, have a good one.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Wendy. Hey, Justin, how you doing, man?
Good, sir. How are you?
Good. Dude, so before we start, I saw Burning yesterday. Jesus Christ, that blew
Oh,
me away,
yeah.
man. What a film.
Yeah.
I finally got, because you said it was one of the best films you'd seen in ages or whatever. And I was like, it was just so intriguing, right? From, like the first few frames. But don't want to say too much because people should see it. But the end, oh my God.
Yeah. I know.
It's one of the best endings I've ever seen. It was absolutely brilliant. So thanks for the recommendation, man.
Of course. If you have the time or the inclination, I'd be curious, just email me kind of what you think the ending is for yourself, because the director won't really say, and I have my own thoughts, but I also read
it's so open to it. I mean, a lot of the movie was so open to interpretation.
Yeah.
He just left things, like hanging, and it was. I mean, I loved all the references to like Jules Legime and things like that, and then it's a bit of Miles Davis with "Lift to the Scaffold," which is the music from "Lift to the Scaffold," and then it just felt very, and felt also very Korean, and I just found the really interesting stuff about the class dimension, and there was so much in it. It was so multi-layered, but it also spoke to me because it's how I got together with my ex-wife was something similar, that kind of scenario.
Oh my God.
Didn't end up that way.
Of course.
But those kind of, that kind of Jules Legime, I've experienced it myself. So it spoke to me big time.
Well, that's fascinating. Have you read Murakami before?
No, I've never, and it's ridiculous. I haven't, even though I spend, half my life in Japan, in my head.
Yeah, you should read probably. Yeah, he's Japanese.
He's Japanese writer, isn't he? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So read the short story that that movie's based on. I think it's called like The Barn or something like that. Anyway, you can find it online and just read the PDF of it. It's very short. It's actually only like 10 pages. But the way
is there like is it what's the connect? It's just the relationship.
Yes, and the fact that the greenhouses, and he's kind of obsessed with the idea of burning one.
Yeah, it was so metaphorical. There's, I mean, I never. That must be a Korean thing as well. It was just like an overdose of metaphor. It was incredible. As a filmmaker, I just found it fascinating. It was such a good recommendation. Thanks,
and that's what I always say as a preface is like, if you love film, like real film and deep film making, like that is a tremendous movie to watch. If someone is there for cheap entertainment and nothing wrong with that, it's like that's not the movie for you then.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, it's just like, it literally felt like everything was a metaphor. Virtually every frame. I mean, it was just so brilliantly crafted. It was, dude, it's definitely one of the best films I've seen this year. No shit. It was brilliant. So thank you.
No, good. I'm glad you liked it. So the retreats. Cool. Anything lingering for you? Otherwise, I'll just kind of give you the thoughts and questions as usual.
No, I'm enjoying writing it. It's kind of, it feels like, it's not like I'm pulling it out of my ass, which with Browntown I was a bit, but hopefully it feels like it's going in the right direction. And you never know, I might get the outline finished by next week. That's what I intend to do. So,
yeah, which would be great. Here's a couple things. So, Trish, I like the idea that she's had miscarriage or miscarriages. The other thing, too, it depends how dark or deep, shall we say, you want to go. It could be guilt from an abortion as well. Yeah. Like something that happened when she was young. It just depends kind of what you want to do with her now.
That's also that's powerful too. Absolutely.
Yeah, and related, very. Because I know some women who have had them and like it was a necessary thing and there's no kind of resonance from it, and then there's others who they're still kind of haunted by the what if.
It's also something pretty close to me as well, man. That storyline. So,
So, in your mind, like, how does our favorite monster haunt the male?
What do you think about the way she looks and stuff? Does that? I mean,
Awesome.
yeah,
Disturbing.
especially as when it's going to be like supernatural as well. It'd be fucking scary. It's like a shark woman with Scylla rocks or Scylla. I think it's pronounced Scylla, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Scylla. I like that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Scylla.
Well, it's in the reference to the Scilly Isles. I mean, I don't know whether I don't even know whether they were named after her. It's possible. I mean, it was,
I'm sure. It's probably a wing toward the myth.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre. But, just off the coast of Cornwall. I can see them from where I'm sitting. They're over there.
Oh, wow. That's cool. But how does she haunt the male line? Like, because you had that written in there, what is your envisioning for that? Like, in what way does she manifest or perturb the males in this family?
I'm not sure whether, I haven't really thought that through yet because, maybe it's, it's like the myth surrounding the family that there is this kind of force that it obviously doesn't take out the men, but it destroys the family when it appears. Everything around it is destroyed. So whether it comes every 100 years or something like that, or so it's like and it's a myth that the men don't. Yeah, I like the idea that they don't know about it. It's just it's just the women that know about it.
That was my other question. It's like you said that it's passed down through the women, and I wondered if that was a differing thing, or a competing thing almost within the family, or whether they're linked. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's just more this kind of idea of the women really having the power, whether it's the supernatural, but that force. So it's kind of just a juxtaposition of he's got the bloody economic power, etc., but really he's much more powerful. It's that kind of thing, and the women are ultimately always are in that family. It's kind of matriarchal in reality, but the men have.
That's a great thing to explore just overall, because one of the things like we talked about last week in particular was this idea of nature being maybe even more powerful than whatever it is we build on top of it or create, which goes to that economic power versus like the power of a woman, and in terms of childbirth and all those other things we could talk about. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, and ultimately, Scylla is, or the force of it should be on the force of nature, supernatural force of nature. So, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So, have you determined kind of why she has returned to haunt them now, and why she's picking on our poor Teddy?
Well, I mean, I think it's partly inadvertent because of the shaman, who's she's not aware of her own powers, so she's summoned her by accident, kind of thing. But it's always potentially there. So I guess I need to think that through. Get the lore down a bit. So I hear what you're saying, but yeah. Exactly. Yeah. What do you think? What would you suggest?
Well, I'll give you an example if it leads you to something. So I don't know what the word is. I'm interested in things that are related to witchcraft and Satanism, not as a practice for myself, not that there's anything necessarily wrong with it. But for example, if you look on YouTube, like I found this woman and she claims to be a witch, and let's just say that she is because she's been indoctrinated into a coven or what have you. And she has this report of her and her boyfriend summoning this demoness. And it supposedly really happened, and she talks about how it affected her and her life has changed now as a result. But she did it by accident, to your point, and this is why I bring it up. She was reading from a spell book, and they didn't really know what they were fucking around with. And as a result, this thing actually came and was way more powerful than they had the wherewithal, knowledge, or power to deal with her. And there's
so
something
what happened?
What happened? they eventually found some sort of charm or spell that cast her away, but it was after she'd wreaked havoc. Like she destroyed the room and, I think scarred her boyfriend, and it was physical like stuff that like manifested and
That's great,
became
man.
all too real for them. Yeah.
I had this weird experience with when I went on this retreat that I'm about to do in September again. It's the third one of it. I've mentioned it to you, I think.
Yeah.
It's called the Thinking Garden. And on the first one and on the second, there was this shaman, and I'd never really come across. I mean, I know about shamans. But shaman, in the UK, they're around, and they have all the ayahuasca shit and all that. But this shaman, she was Turkish and a woman, and I was, like, oh, it's kind of, a little bit gobbledygooky. I don't really buy it, blah blah blah. A bit skeptical, but I had this really strange. I had a real connection with this woman, Gamza, her name is, and she's become a really good friend. But we shared a hut together we had to build. And, yeah, so there's lots of my own experience written into this kind of whole, the nature of crazy retreats. But so it was at the end of it, I had this experience. I did acid, but it was for the first time I'd done it. And I was, in my 50s, finally get around to doing acid. But it was the most intense experience. It was brilliant. Anyway, but at the end, at one part when it was, it's the, peaking, I saw Gamza, and we were in this field, and she was like standing on one leg, and she had a shawl over her head, so I couldn't see her face, and I was just going round and round her. I was walking around her. I remember doing this, and I go. And she'd whispered in my ear before it, because she didn't do acid. She just said to me, "Martz, if you need me, just say my name." And so I'm like, no. And anyway, so after peaking, coming down at the end of it, I was going through like this emotional, the emotional journey at the end, and I called her name, and suddenly she was around. She was like there. Right, it was really bizarre, and I'm sitting in this field in the dark. And I say to her, Gamza, I had this amazing experience. You were standing in, and I was walking around you, and she goes, "Martz, that wasn't me. That was my spirit guide."
Yeah.
I was like, "What?" Anyway.
Yeah.
Completely
No, but play with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but she was doing this really weird. She was humming, and it was like to me, it was like she was humming to the harmony of the universe. It was nuts, man.
Sure. Yeah. There supposedly is like a through frequency anyway. Yeah, we could go down a rabbit hole talking about that too. That's what I'm kind of weaving those experiences into it, because it was amazing. The whole retreat was amazing, and the second one was too. So. Yeah, well, that brings up another question then. So in the treatment, in the outline, do you want like the mushrooms, for example, to produce visions of their manifested guilts, or like, do you want that to be like a device that's used in here? Or do you want it to be more like a fun kind of like, oh, and they did this too as part of the experience? Because you could use that as a tool to really bring out some of the guilts and the dead, that kind of a thing, if you wanted to, in addition to the haunting of Scylla.
Well, I also, so I really like that, man. The drug-induced elements, like you were talking about, ayahuasca, shrooms, but I'll just keep weaving that stuff in, and I like the idea that because they express, basically Charles and Davy, they start discussing, their guilt, and that attracts Scylla. That's the thing. So as soon as you start confessing to what haunts you, that's when she comes. That's what I had in mind.
That's cool. Okay, cool. Why is the head and the brain the main source for her attack? Do you have a reason for it? I think it's cool, but it's head versus heart is kind of where I'm going with it. It's more, I think, why wouldn't she
take the heart. You're thinking in terms of the Greeks thinking in the hearts, in just your soul's in your heart, right? The idea is like the head is the soul. So she just takes your soul, and she's not really interested in the rest of it. So
No,
you know,
that's
she just,
cool. Yeah, yeah. That's cool.
and I just like it would be so hideously dramatic as well. So I quite like that. And dude, it's also a reference to The Thing, you know, when it transforms, so, you know, and it just bites that guy's head and it's shaking him around and stuff. It's so horrific, but also very funny.
Yes. Probably going to have to watch that the 80th time tonight because it keeps coming up. I just love that movie.
I so love that movie. I mean, I know it's on the same page, man. So it's kind of a little reference and nod to that as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool. Do you think that the retreat as a backdrop should have anything to do or tie in even more with the actual mythology? Because it's such a juicy thing, you know. Not to say that the retreat is the mythology retreat, not like that, but just that it ties in somehow more with the natural elements in that specific island, and you know what I mean, like some of those things.
Yeah, I absolutely want to expand on that, and that's really so. You know, I don't know whether it came across the whole kind of I was writing more about the nature,
Yes.
the world around them. You know, and you know, yeah, I was thinking much more about the spiritual side of nature, and yeah, the forces there we don't necessarily understand, and you know, like the animal life. So it's just I guess I was also thinking it's a bit like the thin red line, you know, like nature looking on in humans and
war. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there's something interesting. It's like the environmental aspect of it is really fun. It's almost like they literally could unearth her again. It's like if she had been cast away or buried, you know, and then they're digging up a new headquarters for his, you know, company or something on this otherwise sacred space. Like there's something to play with there, similar to The Thing and the term in the sense of.
Oh, I like that in the ice. Brilliant, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what's so. What you would rather than the summoning, or it's linked to the summoning as well. It's kind of like the part of the stage.
I think it might be linked. Yeah.
I think that's really cool. So dude, that's a fantastic suggestion. Thank you. I love it.
Sure.
So like well, you know, in have you read the story about Scylla? Have you actually read the section in the Odyssey? It's very short.
No, I've read the summary of it from two different sources, so I feel like I have. I didn't read the actual Homer passage.
So she kind of, I mean, she's got an amazing story because she was a goddess.
Yeah,
and that's why yeah, that's right. But when she's you know, the monster, she lives in like a burrow.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
so like in a cave. So maybe, you know, there's a cave that I don't know what they do. Anyway, I'll have a good think about it. That's great.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's it. I think there's some ritual that the shaman wants to do that's associated with the cave. Maybe it's rocks. Maybe it's you know, some ancient symbol she sees and doesn't realize it's connected to this fucking horrible thing that they've literally shut away there, you know, in her burrow. Yeah, that's cool.
Cool. I'll explore that further. That's great, dude. Thank you. Some great, excellent suggestions as always, man. Thank you.
Yeah. So the last thing I would say is I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but it really hit me even more, especially because you've added in some of the nature stuff and how that's going to unfold, is we're going back to nature, but nature should have probably been left alone.
Oh, totally, dude. Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, it's got that whole, Extinction Rebellion thing going on as well. So hopefully it feels very topical, you know.
Yeah. No, very cool. I think that you'll end up either finishing this or coming down close next week.
Yeah, I hope so too, man. Thank you, man. So I just you know, this short I'm developing, Maisie Day. I might have a little outline for that. It'll just be a couple of pages. Can I send you that as well? Just to see what your thoughts are on it. You know, it's just for short, but it's based on, you know, the Browntown universe. but it's like a little part of it for Nina's story. You know, her basically the protagonist, her daughter. You know, it was Tony's daughter. So.
Yeah, I don't see why I wouldn't be able to look at both totally, because you're almost kind of done with this in terms of where you want to go to get started writing it, and then I'll look at that too. That'd be great, please.
Much appreciated, man.
Of course. Well, thank you, everybody, as usual, and I can't believe we're going to be on our last Sunday next week already. In some ways, it really flew by.
It did.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Guys,
Time goes
it's great.
so fast.
I just wanted to say it was really interesting listening to all your different projects. By the way, guys, I didn't share my bloody email, but it wasn't deliberate. I just
Tell the truth.
no, I did, of course not. But it's just, I mean, it's just fascinating. So thanks, guys. It's just really interesting hearing what you're working on. You've got some great stuff going down. Seriously. So. I wasn't just staring at the waves. I was listening to what was going on.
There'll be a quiz at the end, Marty. So we'll.
Oh shit!
Exactly.
Guys, have a great week.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks.
All the best. Ciao.